That loaf of bread in your hand today, it might with imported wheat, not because American wheat got worse, but because America just doesn't grow enough of it anymore. In 2025, farms across the US have fallen silent like graveyards. Some are abandoned, others deliberately set on fire just to stop the bleeding, while American farmers walk away from their fields, drowning in debt, crushed by rising costs and running out of options. And for the rest of us, millions of American families are paying more every day just to eat the foods that used to be dirt cheap. Wheat, flour, cornflakes. But here's the real kicker. We're now relying on Canada, a country we once slapped with heavy tariffs to quietly fill up our grocery shelves with their wheat. If you think food shortages only happen in faraway countries, take a closer look next time you're in the bread aisle. The collapse has already begun, and this time, it's coming from within, from our own farms. We used to take pride in those golden fields, where every harvest stood for something: hard work, stability, independence. But that story, it's from a different time. Now in 2025, you can drive across the Great Plains and pass mile after mile of idle land. The silence isn't from storms, it's from an agricultural collapse. Because when planting seeds becomes a gamble, many farmers choose not to plant at all. According to the US Bankruptcy Court, farm bankruptcies in 2024 surged by 55% compared to 2023, with 216 filings nationwide. It's an unraveling we haven't seen in decades. Small and mid-sized farms are collapsing under the weight of financial pressure, selling off land, walking away, not because they want to, because it's survival. The USDA reports that total net farm income fell by 24% from $159 billion in 2023 to $121.7 billion in 2024, and that was during a decent harvest year. Even in good years, farmers can't break even. In places like Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, the backbone of America's wheat, acres once used for grain are now being converted to cattle operations, because livestock at least offers a little more stability. Meanwhile, input costs, fertilizer, fuel, seed, keep going up, but crop prices stagnant or worse. According to The Guardian, costs have soared so high that even bumper crops leave farmers in debt. The Wall Street Journal confirms input prices are still climbing, even as corn and soybean prices plunge. That's a system under pressure, where the folks growing our food are left with no protection and no profit. And when they stop planting, we all feel it. Less planting means less domestic food supply. That hits everything: flour, breakfast cereals, snack foods. Retail chains like Kroger and Safeway are either raising prices by 20% to 40%, or they're shrinking the packages quietly, so folks don't notice the shortage. For an average middle-class family, this isn't just about a few extra bucks. It's a food security crisis. Spending an extra $30 to $40 a month just to feed 2 kids breakfast used to sound crazy. Now it's the new normal, and if we don't turn things around fast, we won't just be eating foreign wheat, we'll be watching American farming disappear entirely. It's not just about a few lost crops anymore. This is the new reality. Behind every abandoned acre is a deeper breakdown. Farmers aren't just losing income, they're losing faith. Faith in the system, in the policies that were supposed to protect them, and in their own future. And that kind of loss, you can't measure it in dollars. When a farm goes under, it's not just a business shuttering, it's a whole community falling apart. Schools, shops, neighbors, livelihoods, all tied to the land. It's not a natural disaster we're facing, it's a systemic failure. Skyrocketing costs, delayed or watered down government help, global price pressure, all coming together like a perfect storm. The result, the very people who plant the seeds are now the first to go under, on their own land. This crisis isn't some far-off thing anymore. Even folks in big cities, people who think they're far removed, are starting to feel it, because we're all tied to the same food chain. And when that chain breaks, even something as simple as clicking reorder on your favorite loaf of bread might pop back up with a red label: out of stock. Some families already turned to imported bread, not because they wanted to, but because that's all that's left. This isn't about choice anymore. It's about the right to eat in a country that once said no American would go hungry. Empty fields are more than just a bad season. They're a breaking point, because if we can't plant, we can't harvest. And if we can't harvest, our entire food system loses its foundation. If this carries into next year, or the one after that, we won't just be losing bread. We'll be losing control over meals, nutrition, and national self-reliance. And when America can't feed itself, even folks in the middle of New York or Chicago will feel it. Not just in their wallets, but in their routines, their sense of stability. And that right there, that's the kind of risk no country can afford to ignore. Canada, from tariff target to America's breadbasket. Just a few months ago, Canada was making headlines. Another victim of America's 25% import tax campaign, supposedly launched for economic security. But then, something changed. Something nobody saw coming. As America slipped into a wheat shortage, Canada stepped in, quietly, efficiently, and quickly, stocking US grocery shelves. And what were they sending? The very thing we once tried to tax out of existence: wheat. From the massive, endless wheat fields of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, Canadian farmers went full throttle. Their busiest season in nearly a decade. Freight trains packed with grain ran non-stop to ports in Vancouver and Montreal, ready to cross the southern border. And here's the part that really stings. They're not exporting because they have too much. They're exporting because America needs every sack. Right when the US government was issuing tariffs, American farmers were walking off the land. Why? Lack of fertilizer, labor shortages, zero support for rising costs, and don't forget the sky-high diesel and equipment bills. According to the USDA, spring wheat acreage in 2025 dropped to just 9.4 million acres, the lowest since 1970. Even worse, North Dakota, Kansas, and Montana, major producers, all saw double-digit drops in output. Meanwhile, Canada held the line and adapted. Instead of relying on global buyers, they began signing long-term contracts directly with US food manufacturers. A steady, high-quality supply. The result? Bakeries, pasta companies, even fast food chains are now using flour made from Canadian wheat, the very country we once tried to shut out. The trade world calls it the Canada paradox, hit with tariffs, yet thriving in the US market, not by cutting prices, but by becoming the last reliable option for a supply-starved America. Most Americans don't even realize it. But the loaf of bread they picked up this morning may have started as wheat in Manitoba, milled in Minnesota, and bagged just down the street. The switch happened so quietly, no one noticed, but it marks something much deeper than a trade shift. It's the beginning of a growing, irreversible dependence. Because when a nation loses its agricultural self-reliance, the next step isn't just importing more. It's surrendering control of the supply chain. Canada doesn't have to argue or protest. They just plant, harvest, and ship, and the US market folds, quietly, without a fight. And what about our own farmers? The ones who once stood as pillars of rural America. They're watching their fields go fallow, their tractors rust, and their debts stack up, with no buyers in sight. Every freight train full of Canadian wheat crossing into the US brings this reality closer. The title of breadbasket of the world is slipping away. While America argues over tariffs, trade policy, and political influence, Canada is simply growing wheat and doing it well. Bread is still on the shelves, but it no longer symbolizes independence. If we're leaning on Canadian wheat just to make it through breakfast, maybe it's time to ask, who's really feeding America now? There was a time when working Americans didn't think twice about that morning slice of toast or a bowl of cereal before heading out the door. Now, they're counting every dollar. Prices on bread, cereal, and other wheat-based staples have jumped 30% to 50%, according to a chain store age survey. Families making under $50,000 a year, especially in places like Houston, Phoenix, and Detroit, report skipping breakfast at least once a week, not by choice, but because the money's just not there. That's according to Feeding America. And this isn't just about going hungry, it's about health, focus, and daily productivity. Without proper morning fuel, more workers are showing up tired, distracted, or sick, and businesses are seeing the cost. It's not just individuals struggling. Small cafes, vegan bakeries, sandwich shops, the kind that serve the working class. They're stuck choosing between raising prices or shrinking meals. And that humble sandwich, it now costs anywhere from 50 cents to $2 more, enough to make a low-wage worker hesitate before ordering. When demand for nutritious food drops, the whole system takes a hit. School cafeterias, hospital kitchens, factory lunchrooms all start turning to cheaper, low-fiber, high-additive substitutes that do nothing for long-term health. The fallout doesn't stop there. Community clinics across Texas and Florida report 8% to 11% more ER visits in the afternoon, linked to things like dehydration, blood pressure spikes, and digestive issues, all traced back to poor diets and skipped meals. When working families have to choose between eating enough and paying the bills, the entire social structure starts to wobble. Kids show up to school on empty stomachs. Adults push through their workday with avoidable health issues. Freelancers, construction workers, delivery drivers, temp workers, the very people keeping America moving, are under pressure every single morning. They do the math. That $10 I set aside for breakfast, that's 2 more gallons of gas. Buying made in America used to be a point of pride. Now, we're reaching for imported goods because that's what's left on the shelf. Not out of preference, but because at least it's available. And at a price they can still afford. That's what many Americans are saying today. The frustration runs deep, not just because people are short on cash, but because they've lost trust. Why didn't the system protect American-made food? Why are families now forced to buy expensive Canadian goods just to get by? For many in the working class, this isn't just inflation. It's a blow to national identity, right there on the dinner table. As demand slows, small-town bakeries, cafes, and local grocery stores face impossible choices. Raise prices and lose loyal customers, keep prices low and go under. A shop owner in Dayton, Ohio put it plainly, "We can't survive without raising prices, but every time we do, another regular stops coming in. And when those shops shut down, it's not just lost income, it's the loss of accessible food, community space, and the everyday convenience that working families rely on." The danger isn't just empty shelves, it's about losing the power to control your own food. Every major power in history has made food independence a top priority. Why? Because one cross-border drought and flour prices could double overnight, and America wouldn't be able to respond. We don't have enough land, capital, ports, or reliable partners. Canada is ahead on all three. Losing control over our food supply means losing control over the dinner table. You can't set prices. You can't shield yourself from global swings. You don't have a backup when foreign suppliers fail. That's not just an economic failure, it's a national failure. We make these videos to spread the truth, even if only 1 out of 100 people finally wakes up. If that's a mission you believe in, hit like and subscribe. It helps us keep going, and it helps the truth reach the people who need to hear it most. So the next time someone says Trump is the farmer's president, just remember, farm debt is at $561.8 billion, the safety nets are vanishing, and farmers are hanging on by a thread.